Shady Lane Halloween. It didn't start out spooky, but it ended up that way. There's a reason, you know, they call it Shady Lane. When my friends and I got to Ross, parked, and walked into Shady Lane, it was still light. Not so spooky. How did all of these house dwellers agree to have their street closed to cars and drape their homes in magic orange and black and plant ghostly apparitions in the windows? A band of dancers and musicians paraded down Shady Lane in swirls of colors under glittering umbrellas. Drums and flutes brought a New Orleans Mardi Gras celebration to Marin. How it all came together didn't matter. All that mattered was the instant fantasy land that grew more and more real as the light failed and darkness descended. Children of all sizes flooded the street and poured into driveways and up flights of steps. Most of the children were haunted by parents. Faces set with determination to fill their plastic pumpkins or monster-faced empty containers with sweet delights. They moved like sprites and wizards, imps and princesses and superheroes, barely aware of the grown-ups who shadowed them.
I think I've seen you before. Aren't you from Hollywood?
Dollywood.
Dollywood. Oh, I heard of Dollywood.
There was a buzz as though locusts were descending on grain fields. It was the children out in force and a force to reckon with. Candy was sought and candy was obtained. No one stopped to eat any because there was the next house and the next and more candy to get, and you didn't know what would end up in your basket. Many of the adults wore costumes as well. There were witches and giant crabs, and there was a man riding a duck suit. And there were teenagers all decked out as somebody else and breathing in the last gasp of their childhood. The children moved fast, blurs in the camera. They swirled and eddied like a fish school on fishy food steroids.
cowgirl?
Uh,
Is it a girl or a boy? Look at Daddy. Look at Daddy. He's right there. Okay. Where's him? Right here. Okay. Wait, can you see the other strange faces I've never seen?
What is this night that transforms little humans into their dreams, that lends them the power to get what they want or wreak promised havoc instead? A night when the sight of skeletons brings smiles and giant bugs a big laugh, when fear goes and hangs upside down, and under all the howls and hoots is safety and fun. This is the night of Halloween, when Ross's Shady Lane turns into something else again. It's a wild brigadoon of boundaryless abandon. It's a string of open houses where you don't know who lives there, but you do know you're welcome to surge in and rush over and grab what candy and goodies you can, and rush out again without a thank you or a by your leave. Is this a religion? Is this bait for a cult? Or is it only a holiday gone way out of hand and over the top, contained down a protected street of elegant, grand, spooky homes? And it gets darker and darker and spookier and spookier, as though you are sinking lower and lower beneath the ocean until all you can see are fishes with day-glow glitter and electric fins. And then the Mardi Gras band comes back down the street again in its glow-in-the-dark costumes under glittering umbrellas, and you are part of something sweet and spooky and delicate and powerful and swiftly moving, until bedtime comes and the goblins and their parents do the strangest trick of all and disappear for a whole entire year.
The Mendocino Redwood Company filed a timber harvest plan with CAL FIRE that proposes to harvest 758 acres of timber located in Railroad Gulch along the north coast of California in the town of Albion. This pre-harvest northern spotted owl habitat map is taken from the Mendocino Redwood Company's Railroad Gulch THP. It shows nesting and roosting area for 3 northern spotted owls who live around the northeastern region of Unit 1. There's another one located in another part of this THP as well. This detail shows pre-harvest in green. That's the nesting and roosting area. The foraging, more open areas in yellow. Note that the post-harvest shows a significant reduction in the nesting area, converting it into foraging area. Community members are concerned that the cumulative effect of this harvest plan, building upon the previous harvest and the 2008 large fire in Unit 1, or adjacent to it, would produce a significant effect on the NSO's critical habitat and the survival of these birds. MRC has a policy of sustainable and responsible stewardship of the forest, and community members are asking for changes in this THP that will mitigate these effects in this specific area. Mendocino Redwood Company Foresters and managers met with the Albion community members on September of 2014 at the Albion Country Store to hear community concerns and answer questions about the plan. We bring you a part of that meeting as the impacts of the plan on the Albion community and the environment are discussed.
For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Mike Janai, and I've worked for Mendocino Redwood Company for now 14 years. And we're here to answer questions. I don't know the success we're going to have in getting out to the woods today, but at least we can have a discussion. And with that, I will open it up for questions, and if I can't answer it, I'm sure one of our foresters here can. And before we go any further, probably our guys should introduce themselves to everybody as well.
Okay, my name's Johnny Anderson. I oversee the forestry department at MRC, and as of about a year ago, I was forest manager of the Albion tract here, so I know it somewhat intimately.
I'm Wesley Hart. I'm a forester working under Russ. I'm Russ Ivey. I manage the coastal area for Mendocino Redwood Company, so I took over Albion when John moved up into his current position about less than a year ago.
I'm Malcolm McDonald. I live along the Albion River and own property on both sides of it, about 4.5 miles inland.
Bill Heil, one of the neighbors of Mendocino Redwood Company.
Linda Perkins, also a neighbor.
Krista Ivor, I live in Albion, and I'm here mostly concerned about fire hazards in Albion.
Well, a couple of things. One is it's not only the slash piles, it's the fact that you've got a lot of young growth, and that's taking that board foot volume down as far as you are, that's going to be mostly what you have, instead of a forest overstory that keeps the brush damper in the summertime and makes the wildfires easier to control. And just because the house isn't next to the boundary, if it's more than 200 feet away from the boundary, then it gets up into the brush that's up on top. And we've had wildfires in this country before, and it's in situations like that. And but to me, it seems like something's changed. And that's, I mean, if we're not getting a straight story about that, if your management really hasn't changed, why are we looking at different faces? And why are we looking at 758 acres? And, and where did your foresters go that we knew and liked? Most of them were hired by CAL FIRE. Right, I know. Yeah. They decided to pay more money and went and raided you guys. That's a story.
We're not alone in this.
We're not the only company that's happened to.
Yeah.
And the only policy change we've made, Bill, is the landscape planning model that we're using, with the attempt to group up our harvesting in common road networks, be in there and be out of there. The silvicultures that we made commitments to follow right from the beginning have not changed at all. The way we've written the plans, as I said, we used to put those minimums in our plans, and I don't think anybody around here has seen us cut down to the minimums. So the company policies haven't changed a bit, but we do have new faces. And we did some structural changing in an effort to take HRC and MRC and have it so they both had the same kind of structural makeup, and provide for people like John to work across both companies. So that.
But can we address the fire issue?
Yeah,
here?
let's do.
Because, like,
Let's
we're
go on.
going
Yeah.
all over the place, and I'm really concerned about you doing a huge cut, taking a bunch of trees, making $1 million, and leaving a bunch of slash, and then you're not going to be able to burn it because we don't get enough rain, and it sits there for 2 or 3 years, and then we have a fire.
So let me address our.
So let's address that,
Yeah.
because I want to
All right.
hear that. Albion wants to hear that. So let's go with that one.
What we discussed earlier was, what do we do with the slash? That's how we started the conversation, because of the potential for increase in fire hazard. So we have two methods that we're planning on harvesting out there, using tractors and using yarders. And when we use tractors, we take the slash that's brought into the landing in the form of treetops and whatnot, and all that's pulled back into the woods and used as erosion control on the skid trails, walked in by the tractors, and so there are no large accumulations of slash. Now, at the same time, we're not out there in the woods taking every branch and every treetop we take out of there. The words I used with you, we don't want to be up there vacuuming up everything in the woods and leaving a lot of bare soil. It's valuable for erosion control, it's valuable for nutrient recycling, and so you want a fair amount of that in the woods. Do you want it this thick? No, but certainly, you know, having a good ground cover is very advantageous when we're done.
Having the forest there is very advantageous too.
Absolutely.
Just
I
want to.
agree with you.
Yeah, you don't look like you agree though. You guys are smirking. You're, you know, doing this corporate double talk, and I don't go for it. To be honest with you.
Okay, I'm just trying to address some of the concerns here.
I know you are.
Okay.
I hear you.
And you know, I'll leave it at that.
So let's stay on
So
fire. I wanna
okay,
stay
we'll
focused.
stay on fire. So that's what we do with the slash and the tractor logging. In the cable logging, certainly we end up with a fair amount of tops up at the landings, and those are put into a pile, and we burn those in the winter in a controlled manner. We wait until soils are saturated, we got a good storm going, and at that point in time we burn them. And what I mentioned to you was, yeah, last 2 winters have been hard to do that. We have done it though in certain areas when we were at our wettest point and felt comfortable about burning. Today, you know, first rain we've had in what feels like, you know, 2.5 years or so, certainly we would not be burning on a day like today. Chances are we'll have the opportunity to burn that. We do usually wait a year or so to go ahead and burn that because we want that to be dry enough to be able to burn. We do put fire lines around every single pile. That's a requirement of loggers do before they leave. And so, and again, we leave a slash out there in the cable yarding areas as well for the same reasons we do on the tractor logging. And so as long as we can get to those piles, which, you know, like I said, last winter we burned some piles. It's kind of dependent on, you know, the weather, of course.
I just think you guys are biting off a really big amount of a big project, and maybe if you did it in smaller pieces, it would be more manageable since we're kind of in a huge drought in California right now. And 2008 was really scary. You know, it was just, you know, so maybe just breaking it down and doing it piece by piece instead of this big chunk. It just sounds really extreme to be cutting, you know, a huge amount, leaving a bunch of slash, and then like, well, maybe we can burn it. We don't know for 2 or 3 years. It's kind of, that's just, I don't know. That's really the plan.
In the 2008 fires was that when the fires burned on our property in areas that we had thinned, they did not crown. When they hit plantations that had been clear cut either by our neighbors or by our previous owners, they exploded. There was a lot of fuel and small trees that fuel those burns. So we're not proposing any of that type of cutting for this plan.
In the fire off the Table Mountain is a good example of an old clear cut. Table Mountain, yeah, the lightning fire had happened in the gulch under Table Mountain. There was an old clear cut by LP that was thickened small trees, and that's the reason why that one took off. But Mike's absolutely right that in those selection areas we saw it, you know, not only here but in other parts of the property, it stayed on the ground. We had very, very little crowning of any of the fires. If we did, it was very localized in a quarter acre here and there. So.
Well, and in the lodge fire this year, up on the eel in that basin, Cal Fire came. It was on BLM land, but they came onto our property, used our road system up there, and backfired through land that we had thinned, and it stopped the fire, and it stayed on the ground.
That's right.
So our experience would suggest that what we're doing works pretty well.
Did you have a question? Looks like you're-
Bernie did.
Yeah, I say I have two, but one of them, first one is just relative to this water issue, is that can you folks guarantee that we're not going to lose the best salmonid reach that we have within 25, 30 miles? I don't know. that the sim, this is taking so much away from Railroad Gulch. Railroad Gulch is our salmon nursery, pretty much. And I can't imagine, just common sense wise, can't imagine taking that much away, taking 2/3 or more of the trees away, all those operations, and having a viable salmon nursery, if you want to call it that.
Bernie, we talked a little bit about that 2/3 number that is shown in the plan. We purposely put the minimums of the forest practice rules in the plans, but our intentions are not to cut down to those minimums. So we've agreed to put some language in the plan that more closely describes what our harvest intensity is going to be. So that's number one. And then number two, within the plan area, the riparian management zones are getting little or no harvesting, and that's the focal point for the fish. Those zones are managed for better fisheries habitat, bigger trees, wood inputs into the system to improve the fishery.
How wide are those zones along there?
RMZ is 190 feet. There's at least 100 feet of no harvest. And then from 100 to 150, there's shade requirements. 150 to 190, there's shade requirements also.
So we have to leave at least 65% canopy in that outer 50
and
feet.
for 100 feet, there's no harvesting on either side. And is that like any blue water, blue line stream?
So we're talking about a fish stream at this point, and it could be even a seasonal fish stream. And then upstream of that, the class 2 water courses, that we call them, that have water enough times of the year to be able to support aquatic species other than fish. Those we've broken up into 2 categories. One, because sometimes those can be rather small, sometimes they can be 200 acres. So anything over 100 acres has almost the same requirements as a fish stream. And the smaller ones have a 50% requirement of canopy, of conifer canopy. So many of these protection zones along the creek, well, LP already cut down some of those minimums already. So we flagged a buffer, we'll walk through it and go, hey, it's kind of like the forest practice minimums upslope. It's not there, or it's right at it. We walk through it, there's no treatment whatsoever. And we have the same concern on the J Road plan, and understandably so. And one gentleman said, you know, boy, I'm gonna hate to see all the sediment going down the creek. And I told him at that meeting, I said, if there's any dirt getting into any creek, then we want to know about it, because that is not in the THP to occur, and it's not something that we want to see on our property. And I've spent a lot of time on the J Road plan, and that did not occur on those creeks. There is the same canopy on those creeks that it had before, maybe a few trees on those outer edges that we talked about, but having to leave 65 to 85% canopy in those outer edges of those protection zones on those creeks, and if it's been entered before, and you know, the last 20 years or so, maybe by LP, you're not going to be doing anything in there. Like Mike said, we're trying to manage those for bigger, older trees for the fisheries habitat. So many of those are uncut areas.
This is interesting that you folks talk about that, about the details of it. But what my question is can you guarantee that we're going to have a healthy salmonid nursery, if you want to call it?
What I can guarantee is that our forest management won't have an effect on the health of the salmonid population. I can't guarantee for other reasons necessarily that might be outside of our control, but what we put in within our control, yeah, I'll guarantee that.
At the nursery, right. Ocean conditions are different animals. Yeah. If they don't have any place to reproduce, the game's over. Yeah. You know, and this is the only that I know of intact, relatively intact, 100-year-old is, since it's a major logging in watershed, sub-watershed. And that's I'm really concerned about that. And it's the way it's said in there. It's to take it all at one time.
What was your question?
To to take it all at one time seems irresponsible. And that's actually my second question is that are you folks really are responsible to anything but the bottom line on this? Is there a longer term issue? This it has all the appearances of a short term, make $40 million out of this.
Bernie, it isn't. We're not proposing anything different than the commitments we made right from the beginning. There's no change, and we are in it for the long haul.
But the changes are that the climate's changed. I mean, we have the worst drought in recorded history. I said that before. We have an El Nino predicted for this season. God knows what it's going to be like next year. If we have monsoon downpours, how are you going to control that silt from getting into the river?
We designed the plan in such a way that it won't get into the river.
During an El Nino. Is that right?
Yeah,
we can't control that.
We can't control the El Nino, but we can control how our roads drain. We can control how we're going to alleviate areas where there's perch fill right now that in an El Nino could let go. We're taking crossings out that were put in inappropriate places. All of that should actually improve the success rate of what we're doing